Okay, so I'm Sue Johnston, in case you didn't know that, and I wanted to talk about the winter blues. You ever get them? I'm not talking about like seasonal affective disorder, called SAD for short, or people who deal with serious depressions, but just that sort of like, winter's arrived, the temperatures are colder, I don't feel like going outdoors, I really just want to hibernate, I don't feel like doing anything, I don't feel good. And some of that can happen just from the lack of sunshine. So I'm going to talk about a few ways that you can overcome the winter blues. And if that's something that you've ever experienced, or maybe you know somebody who has, follow along and you might get some ideas. I have a girlfriend who, when she was living in Newfoundland, because that's her home province, which is the easterlymost part in Canada, she every winter would get the winter blues. She would get just a slight mild depression and just not feel good. I used to visit her, fly out there to Newfoundland and stay for a week or so after Christmas just to break up what was going on and hopefully to try to encourage her. Her husband was great. He used to take up reading a book to her, and that helped as well. So, but basically, I used to say to her, listen, you know that you get this way. So, why don't you create or set up a project, something for yourself to do, or a place to go, or something, some activity, so that you can distract yourself from the winter blues and encourage yourself and feel better about going through those days? Well, guess what? She moved to Ontario and she got this wonderful restored farmhouse. And I like to go visit her there. She puts on a great spread. There's a wonderful fireplace. We sit and we chat and knit by the fireplace and enjoy one another's company. Well, recently I decided to treat her to getting her nails done. Since it's so easy for me to visit with her now, which is only 20 minutes down the road from where I live. In fact, I call ourselves the country mouse and the city mouse. Do you know that book from when you were a kid? Anyways, now I visit her from my wee little city, Orangeville, and go over to her place in the country. So that helps us manage our time in the winter, but you still need something to look forward to. And you can't be flying off everywhere all the time, which is one option. And people book a trip. In our cases, sometimes, people that I know, they book and go to Cuba or the Dominican or Jamaica, someplace where an island where it's warm. Ah, or they might visit family overseas or do a trip like that where you fly somewhere and you're completely distracted. But not everybody can do that. Or maybe we've already done it and we need something else. To combat the winter blues, we can try incorporating regular exercise into our routine, but maybe we're already doing that, or we just don't feel like doing that. That's what winter blues does. It makes you feel like you don't want to do the usual things that you do to help yourself feel better. I mentioned this before. You can maximize exposure to natural light. That means, well, if the sun shines, get out there for at least half an hour, go for a walk or dress up, bundle up if you have to, and get some of that vitamin D into you. Some people use these light units and expose themselves to those so that they can help increase their sense of well-being, but that's not always possible, or maybe you don't have one. So let's think about other things to do. For example, you could stay socially connected, and that's what I did with my girlfriend. You can plan indoor activities. Again, that's what we did. You can set realistic goals for yourself for a season. So you can take on a project, an indoor project that you can work at and complete. And sometimes, because you're lacking motivation, you may think, well, I can do that, but I really don't feel like doing that. And that's, if you're in that position, you really need to push yourself to get involved in something. You can consider setting a realistic goal for yourself, like creating a project, cleaning a closet, doing something practical short term that's going to have a more immediate effect. Did you know that viewing positive or calming images can have a positive impact on your mood and sense of well being? What it does is it triggers pleasant emotions. It helps stir up a chemical, a feel good chemical in your system called serotonin, and it can help reduce stress. You can bake, you can cook, you can take on something new. I was working away on creating some chunky applesauce, and I can share how I do that. You can make muffins. I don't know, just something short term. Try to avoid eating a lot. A little bit of indulging here and there is good, but you don't want to overeat. And you don't want to come away saying, okay, great, I've gained 5 pounds or 10 pounds. Now I got to work at that. To combat the winter blues, one senior lady who was 82 decided to keep her Christmas tree up until spring. I thought she had a nice idea, so I decided to try it, except that rather than a Christmas tree, I added some extra lights to a little birch tree that I have. I'm sure you can come up with a lot of creative ideas to keep yourself occupied, and that's the goal. So now I'm going to share my chunky applesauce recipe with you and a few other thoughts as we go along. So I start with Macintosh apples because they have a certain natural sweetness to them, and they're generally a soft apple. Of course, I peel them and I slice them. I just slice them any old way. I don't worry about creating little chunks because the apples tend to break down when they're in the pot as they're cooking. I get my mason jars ready. I have a funnel that I use, and I've cut off the narrow end of the funnel and I've made it much wider. It took a bit of engineering, but we managed to do that. Stanley, that is. He did all the cutting for me. So we set that on top of the mason jars, and then it's easier to spoon it in when it's time to jar the applesauce. I use a 1/4 cup of brown sugar, and I use about 1/2 cup of water. Now, as the cooking goes along, you may decide to add a little bit more water, but you really don't need a lot because the natural juices of the apple comes forward, so they have a lot of their own moisture. I start with the stovetop turned on high, and then I gradually reduce it as it begins to build up some momentum in the pot there. And I stir it occasionally. You don't really need a lot of stirring because, well, I've never had it stick to the bottom and burn yet. As the chunks started to boil down and the sauce began to appear, I decided to add a little more water. So I might have added another 1/4 cup to 3/4. Again, it's personal preference. I think you can judge. You'll be able to know whether it needs a little bit more water or not. You see how it's starting to thicken up? It's looking a little bit more like applesauce. It does work, it does happen. Now it's time to start putting it into the mason jars. And mason jars are really good because they help dissipate the heat that's through the glass. So to recap, there are several ways that you can combat the winter blues, and I'm sure you can be creative and come up with your own ideas that are unique to your lifestyle and your personality. And if you're feeling inclined, share those ideas with me. I'd love to hear them. Okay, final note. Do something that's going to get you interacting with others. I work part time with a greeting card company, and I'm getting to know some of the employees, and some are becoming my friends. So I noticed that one of the girls in the store was experiencing the winter blues. Her mom lives in New York, so she can't visit. When I go into the store, I make a point to chat with her, hopefully to cheer her up a little bit. Find a creative way to make a difference in somebody's life today, and that will make a difference in your own life.